So, hello everyone, my name is Cooper. I'm an undergraduate student at Brandeis University, where Charlie teaches, and I'm here today to give you guys a bit of an overview on what student work on the project is like, and also examine some of the data that students have collected. So, I'll be providing specific examples of our work, as well as showcasing how our data has been used and how it continues to be used. But primarily, I'm going to focus on the scope and scale of student work within the project. All right, so as a small background on student work, as Charlie mentioned, or excuse me, as Jonathan mentioned, it began with 4 universities, now with 3. It's Brandeis University near Boston, University of Arizona in Arizona, and Mount St. Vincent University in Canada. Student work with Migra began in earnest in summer of 2022, and I've been with the project since just after summer of 2022, beginning in the fall. Students are tasked specifically, this is directly from the job description, with building a database that will then be used to understand patterns of conservation, impact across the migratory pathways of migratory species. So that's where student work focuses specifically. But to be a little more specific, what exactly have students been researching? Well, as Jonathan mentioned, we started with over 900 species, with an average of 36 species per student. We combed through literally every single one of them, searching through all the online literature, all the online databases, everything we could to find all the conservation information that we could about all 900 of these species. Phase 1 of student work involved narrowing down this list of 900 down to 40. Through our data collection, we gave the PIs, co-PIs, and other affiliated faculty on the project the information they would need to determine what species we wanted to focus more on. And from those 40, we then selected 13. Those are the pronghorn, the golden eagle, American bison, gray whale, hoary bat, pintail duck, monarch butterfly, olive ridley turtle, lesser long-nosed bat, sockeye salmon, rufous hummingbird, great hammerhead, and the Mexican free-tailed bat. I know that's a lot, but I'm going to focus on the data that we collected from one of those species specifically in just a moment. That way you guys can get a sense of exactly what students were doing when they were looking at all 900 of those species. But very quickly, just to show you exactly the scope and scale of student work, started with 900, got down to 40, and then again down to 13. So I'm going to talk specifically about the sockeye salmon, as promised, just giving a small example of something that students looked at. So first thing that we looked at is the conservation status and trend of the sockeye salmon. We found that the populations are of least concern, as labeled by the IUCN, and that their populations are relatively stable in most of their populations nationwide, continent-wide, really. Ecosystem services. We found that they provide a lot of ecosystem services through the sustaining seabird populations and things like that, but notably they provide no ecosystem disservices. In some cases, something like the Canada goose may provide ecosystem services, but may also provide disservices in some ecosystems. So we look for both of those, not just the positives. We also look for their role in human society. For sockeye salmon, this was a big one. They have extreme cultural importance to a lot of indigenous peoples, but also extreme economic importance to communities continent-wide, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, and I believe also in the East Coast. Yeah, especially in the Pacific Northwest, though. They have a really big economic impact as fisheries rely on sockeye salmon very heavily. Oh, and one more thing. They're also an indicator of general ecosystem health. So they are both of economic, social, and ecological necessity in pretty much everywhere that they're found. We also looked at relevant conservation policy and relevant governing organizations. We found they're regulated by 12 federal agencies and 5 regional agencies, in addition to state-level agencies. So, like I said, sockeye salmon are extremely important to a lot of different groups, so they're very heavily regulated. Some examples of relevant leaders within salmon conservation include Idaho Fish and Game and other state-level fish and game services, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, so a Canadian governmental organization, and NOAA Fisheries, something that I'm sure you're all familiar with. But this data does not include any fieldwork that may come with our Fellows program, but right now, our data focused on existing literature and online database searches. So, I wanted to talk quickly about how the data is being used. So this is a map that I created. This is of the 13 different migratory species that the project is currently focusing on, and their range overlaps. I know it's extremely busy and there's a lot to look at, but pretty much what I ended up finding when I overlaid the ranges of all of the species using GIS is that there's a lot of overlap in the American Great Plains region. That by itself doesn't tell you a ton, but it can be a really good jumping off point for future research directions, and at the same time, can start interesting conversations about area-based conservation rather than focusing on specific species. Just something to think about. I find it very interesting. Now, I also wanted to talk briefly about the student experience with me. And I want to preface this. I'm not just saying this because my bosses are here. It's been a truly wonderful experience. I have felt and continue to feel like I'm making active contributions to a research plan. It feels as though I am genuinely contributing to the future of a scientific process, and it's really enjoyable. And I know I don't just speak for myself. I know I speak for every undergraduate on the project. We feel as though our input genuinely makes a difference in this project, and that is extremely refreshing because I know how difficult it can be for undergraduates to really break into that, especially in the sciences. Yeah, so another thing is I can tell, based on the fact that we went from 900 species to 40 to 13, that student work really is driving this project. And it feels really wonderful to be a part of something significant, and it feels wonderful to see my work represented. I've seen, just in Jonathan and Charlie's presentation, projects that I've individually worked on. I've worked on the CEQ memo analysis, I've worked on many of the species that Jonathan touched on, and it is genuinely great to know that my work makes a difference. So, work is now continuing with student involvement in phase 2 of the project, which is looking more specifically at these 13 species. And I believe that's everything I have, so I'm now going to hand it off to Aaron. All right.